All right, we'll call the meeting to order at 6:00 p.m. First item on the agenda is roll call.
And I am virtually, but appreciate your patience. So Nyla Fry,
Here.
Trisha Brown,
Here.
Sam Kaufman,
Here.
Kristen Runge,
Here.
Aaron Moran,
Here.
Joe Zisselsberger,
Here.
and Robert McPherson.
Here.
Next item on the agenda is confirmation of open meeting compliance.
And I can confirm that the draft agenda was published in the Waunakee Tribune on 2/14. The final agenda was posted in all 3 official posting locations on 2/12. And the final agenda and packet were made available online on 2/11. Just a couple important notices for the audience members. Please be sure you've signed in on the sign-in sheet with your name, address, and municipality for accurate record keeping. And those interested in participating in public comment or public hearing, please fill out the appropriate form and hand it to Todd Schmidt, and we will read them off at that time.
All right, thank you, Carla. Next up is public comment. Do we have any sheets that have been turned in for public comment, Todd?
We do have one, Dave Laufenberg, 6988 Mefford Road, representing Springfield.
This is agenda item.
Please, if you don't mind, yes, go up to the podium and press the button and it turns green. Thank you, Dave.
Okay. My name is Dave Laufenberg. I'm the chair from the town of Springfield. Reading your agenda items. If you do proceed to disband the fire department as it is now, in 2010, when the remodel was done, Springfield paid $162,000 toward that. Will we be reimbursed for any of that expense? That's my question.
Okay, so we are not allowed to respond in public comment, but we will take that up when we will attempt to answer that or at least note it when we have our discussion.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other forms that have been turned in?
No forms. I'll check Zoom here. All right, we have Mary Heimbecker that I'll bring in to talk now. If anybody else wishes to speak who's participating on the Zoom, click raise hand and we'll bring you in. Sorry, my voice is a little rough tonight. Oh, yeah, looks like I.
And Mary, if you could just state your name and your address for accurate record keeping, that would be great.
Yes, my name is Mary Heimbecker, 306 West 3rd Street. I just wanted to say that I support the resolution and the business items number 3, the discussion of creating Waunakee's own fire department. I have been to several of the fire board meetings in the past year. Just about a year. I've been going fairly regularly. And I can see why Waunakee needs to do this. And I really feel that the way Vienna and Springfield specifically that I've seen have been acting is really detrimental to the welfare of our fire department. And I think we need to change what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Todd, other comments?
If I did get another public comment form from Leon Zink, 7327. Is that Springfield? Springhill? Okay.
Leon Zink. I'm representing the town of Springfield. I am a supervisor in the town, supervisor number 4. I echo Dave's question on the reimbursement of the loan that was given out for the remodeling of the firehouse. The second thing is, I do believe that as a fire district, as we have been contributing 6% on an annual basis to the budget of the Waunakee Fire District, that once that district is disbanded, if you vote to do so, then we are to be reimbursed at 6% of the valuation of all the apparatuses, as well as the building itself on top of the remodel. once that, if you all do vote to disband the district, that is part of the provisions of a district. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment, Leon. Any other comments?
No.
Anybody else online that would like to speak? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public comment period. Next item up is consent agenda. Do we have anything we would like removed from the consent agenda and discussed separately? Seeing nothing, do we have a motion?
I'll move approval. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up is report and announcements. First item on the agenda for that is EMS Commission.
EMS did not yet meet this month. We've postponed it until next week. We have in hand the report, and so they wanted to make sure that the report came out not after the meeting took place. It's a really weird way to put that.
All right, thank you, Robert. Sustainable Waunakee Ad Hoc Committee met and we discussed some potential events that we'll have in the future as a result of being granted that authority or privilege from the board here. And we also discussed the future of the committee, what it might look like if we continue on after the report is filed and from MSA, and general consensus is that we would like to agree to do that, but that would of course be at the permission of the board. Next up, Public Works Committee.
Public Works met on February 6th, and we just approved on the consent agenda Public Works improvement projects for South Division Street, Dover Drive, and Fish Street. There is going to be many projects and improvements done this summer. Thanks.
And next up, Plan Commission.
Plan Commission met a week ago. There were 3 items that we looked at. The first 2 will be public hearing items 1 and 2 tonight. And the third one was to look at a potential expansion to Ace Hardware. And we were very happy about that one.
And number 6 is Community Development Authority. We had a short meeting last week. We extended TID 4 for 2 months in order to capture the dollars gained by the TID for affordable housing in the future. We updated the policies regarding the Waunakee Housing Betterment Fund in order to reimburse contractors directly rather than homeowners reimbursing the contractors and then us reimbursing the homeowners. And we will be meeting again next month. Any other committees, boards, or commissions that are not listed? Any other announcements? Oh, I'm sorry.
Just Great Waunakee met last week, and just FYI that the library's hosting an art swap this Saturday. So if people have craft supplies and art supplies they want to get rid of, or they're looking to try something new this winter, it's an awesome event.
All right. So bring our craft supplies to the library on Saturday. That's great. Any other committees, boards, or commissions? All right. Seeing none, any other announcements?
Kristen, I have just one announcement. There's an election tomorrow for the February primary. And then also anybody interested in applying for committees, those applications should be submitted online.
All right. Thank you, Carla. All right, next up then is public hearing. And our first public hearing is a public hearing and discussion on the action requested by Jordan and Allison Camps for a certified survey map combining lots 36 and 37 in Golden Ponds addition to Westbridge. And Todd, Lauren? Yep.
Yep, let me pull this up here. So this is a fairly straightforward request. They're seeking to combine 2 lots in Golden Ponds. The only issue we ran into is there's an easement on the shared lot line, an easement on either side of that, but they've gotten the releases that they need. So staff is recommending approval of the CSM as presented.
All right. And we will open, well, do we have anybody from the Camps family that would like to present? No? All right, excellent. And if any questions ahead of time? Seeing none, let's open the public hearing at 6:09. Do we have anybody who would like to make a public comment on this item, either in the audience? Do we have anyone online who would like to make a comment on this item for public hearing?
And a reminder, click raise hand if you do wish to comment online.
All right, second request for public comments on this item. Seeing none, let's close the public hearing at 6:10. All right, and what questions do we have, board? Robert, any questions? Joe?
At Plan Commission, there was, I think, one utility that we were still waiting for the final approval on. Has that been obtained?
Yeah.
Aaron? Sam? Trisha?
Nope.
Nyla? No, all right. Seeing none, then I would like to make a motion to approve the certified survey map combining lots 36 and 37s in the Golden Ponds addition to Westbridge.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks for coming in tonight. Yeah. Next public hearing is a public hearing and a discussion and action on a request by Waunakee Remodeling for a certified survey map to divide 1001 Frank H. Street into 2 lots. And Lauren, back to you.
Yep, so this time, instead of combining lots, we're dividing a lot. The 2 new lots would both be zoned I-1 light industrial, which is consistent with the area around it. And it would meet, both of them would meet the minimum requirement for lot size in the I-1 industrial district. There is a shared parking space, parking lot between what would be the new lot 1 and the new lot 2. So there may be concerns with sufficient parking. They do meet the parking minimum, but there may be concerns with having sufficient parking for business operations. So we're recommending approval of the CSM conditioned upon a parking and access easement being recorded between the 2 properties.
All right. And so with that, do we have anybody that would like to speak on behalf before we go to public hearing? Seeing none, let's open the public hearing at 6:11. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make a comment on this item for public hearing? Is there anybody online that would like to make a comment for this item on public hearing?
There's no hands.
No hands? All right. Last call. All right, seeing no comments, we will close the public hearing at 6:11 p.m. And with that, what questions do we have, Nyla? Trisha?
No, just a planning commission discussed this over 2 meetings and then asked to go back and do additional analysis, which Lauren provided the overview of. So I think no questions. Good with this.
Thank you, Trisha. Sam?
No questions.
Aaron?
No questions right now.
Joe?
Nothing.
Robert?
What was the intended use of the split lot? Or do we not know that yet?
So the intention at this time is to build another building on that new lot, but reserve the ability to sell off that new lot or new building if that's what works better for the company.
Okay, just trying to understand the need for the parking restriction.
All right, any other further questions? All right, seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve the certified survey map to split 1001 Frank H. Street into 2 lots, conditioned upon the recording of a parking and access easement between the 2 lots.
Second.
Do we have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next up is licenses and permits. Discuss and take action on an original alcohol beverage license application for Hot Boys Hospitality, doing business as Grand Stay Hotels and Suites in Waunakee. And
And-
Carla, is this to you?
Yep. So this is a original alcohol license. It is a beer only license. So it's not a full license for selling. I'm losing my train of thought, but they can only sell beer, and they have been approved through the PD for an operator for the agent. So it's just up to you guys if you want to approve the license.
All right. So what questions do we have? Aaron?
I'm not sure if I'm thinking of the temporary alcohol license process, but I know sometimes it says how they're going to ensure there's no underage people buying alcohol. At like a-
Yes.
Is that, they don't have to provide that here, right?
No, they just have to provide a premise description of where the alcohol will be served. They have to have a licensed bartender at all times, and they have one that they have applied for. The owner has spoken and said that they might provide another one in the future, but only alcohol will be served and sold during the times that he is working.
That person's there. Okay, sounds good. I just wasn't sure if I was mixing up the forms.
But to be clear, they can't sell to underage people. Okay.
That's the
Correct.
rule. I just was like, noticed that I was missing, but I wasn't sure if I was mixing up my form. So thank you, Carla.
Yep.
All right, Joe.
I've got nothing.
Okay, Robert,
No.
Sam,
No questions.
Tricia,
No, good.
Nyla? No questions? All right. So no further questions for me either. Aaron, you asked the one that I was going to ask. So with that, does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion. Approval of granting an original alcohol beverage retail beer only license for Hot Boys Hospitality LLC. Agent Jamin Patel doing business as Grand Stay Hotels and Suites Waunakee LLC located at 975 Frank H. Street for July 1st, 2024 through July 30th, 2025 upon meeting all contingencies.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion on the motion?
I think we need to amend the motion. The way it was stated, it actually said July 30th, but the read is June 30th.
No, they're gonna have to come back. I mean, I guess Carla can address it, but they'll have to come back in and get a new license effective July 1st of this year.
Agreed, but when he read it, he said July 30th.
I said July 3rd.
Okay, sorry.
Just a
All right.
detail.
Do we have a friendly amendment?
I have a friendly amendment to
I'll second
end
the
it at
amendment.
June 30th, 2025.
All right, then we have a motion and an amendment. Do we have to vote on the amendment to the motion?
I think all we did was we changed the date to be
Yeah.
consistent with what was in the packet, so
So
I
we
think
can
you're
just
good.
vote. Okay, great. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, thanks for catching that. All right, next up on the agenda then, discuss and take action on employee personnel handbook modifications.
And I wonder, I know your audience has more individuals curious about the fire department items. If you'd want to do this after that, that's fine with me.
All right. Would we agree, board? All right, we're all in agreement. Let's move to item number 2, discuss and take action on resolution regarding notice to withdraw from the Waunakee Area Fire District. And I am not sure if we're going to you first, Brian. I think we are.
Or I can, and just to be clear, my understanding is we're gonna be taking up business items 2 and 3, and then you'll go back to 1. Because we do have 2 separate agenda items. The next one is discussion and take action on resolution creating Village of Waunakee Fire Department. They're obviously both related. If I can, just to try to answer the comments during public comment, one is, and I think we're probably just, maybe it's semantics, but to be clear, any action you're taking tonight is not to disband the fire district. The resolution that is before you is for the Village of Waunakee to withdraw from the district. We would not have the authority to disband the district because we're only one of 4 parties. And the other thing I'll say is the operating agreement that exists right now, as is typically the case, essentially addresses how assets get distributed if and when the district, if you approve the agenda item tonight, the resolution to provide notice to withdraw, there's a process that we can use. But as is identified in the resolution itself, is sometimes these resolutions to withdraw from a district, if they're adopted by one body, then result in additional conversations between the membership, because we obviously within the operating agreement have a process for the withdrawal, but sometimes it benefits everyone to do it a little bit differently than what's exactly in the agreement. And so I would say that yes, we will definitely be dealing with those issues, but the two resolutions for you tonight, one is withdraw of the district, and then assuming you approve that resolution, the next one would be, essentially starting the process of creating a Village of Waunakee Fire Department, which would take a while. And then when you look at the language of the operating agreement, and the notice period for withdrawal of the district is 18 months. And so that obviously is a lengthy period in and of itself. But then also just, going back to the resolutions themselves, I think a lot of this maybe comes back to some of the points that were made at the last village board meeting. And I know that Robert made a presentation on that, and some of this is just math, where my belief is, in all likelihood, when this district was formed at some point in time in the past, that the sizes of the communities were probably a little bit closer. And now we have a situation, and I know Robert presented on this at the last meeting, where the village is contributing I want to say 75% or 71, okay, 71, 72% of the funding, but it doesn't have a majority of votes. And that is, I can tell you that other communities who have been in the village's position over the, let's say, the past 20 years and have contemplated similar action, that is usually the basis why it's done. In other words, a fire district is created at one point in time, and a lot of the communities that are participating are sharing relatively equally in the cost, and then therefore sharing relatively equally in the voting. Here, village has grown. And so now you have a circumstance where Waunakee is contributing a high percentage and does not have the control that you would typically see of a community that is contributing 70% of the funding. And so I don't think it's that surprising that this is before you. And I wanted willing to try answer any questions that you have. You're not the first community to do this if that's the rational, the basis for doing it. And so I'm not sure if Todd or, Robert also want to comment a little bit. And, Robert, we worked all together. Robert did a really good job with the resolutions themselves. And I think, they cover more to I don't want to put words in Robert's mouth, but I think the resolutions are good because you could have just had a resolution that said we withdraw from the district and let's provide notice. There's a lot more information for the public in these documents as they've been presented to you.
All right, with that, Robert.
Yeah, so thank you, Brian, for the lead in on that, and not putting words in my mouth. That's exactly what the point was, is we knew that, Nyla and I had had discussions about this as well. The transparency was of utmost importance to us in this process. We don't want anyone up here to feel uncomfortable about taking this action because they feel like there's something that we're not telling the public or there's something that we're not telling the board. Trying to be as transparent as possible throughout this process. And as we've learned in the past couple of years in trying to, get some traction for the village to have a bit more say in what's going on with the fire district that we pay so much money into, we were met with incredibly strong resistance from the other municipalities. And so there were two objectives we wanted to accomplish here. One is recognizing that it is an 18-month withdrawal window. We wanted to get this out here sooner rather than later because, again, as I talked about the last meeting, even if we pass this tonight, we're still talking the end of 2026 before that we would be able to withdraw from that agreement. Now, there could be different actions that take place during negotiations. For that, there are clauses within the operating agreement that allow for mutual disbanding and things like that. But that's not what we're here to discuss tonight because we don't know what the other municipalities are going to do when they get this information, if we do approve it. The other part of it is we wanted to make it very clear that we continue, this message has been consistent, that we continue to support the volunteer firefighters, that we get them the resources that they need, because this is a period of uncertainty and we don't want anybody to feel like, we take this action and suddenly there's no support. The support doesn't end. In fact, the first resolution actually calls for, the second resolution actually calls for doing the improvements to the building that we already own immediately, as opposed to waiting until we form our own fire department. So I think that I think we're supposed to take them separately. So, it's the first one as far as the withdrawal goes. That's pretty much it. We're telling them that, in 18 months, the village would no longer be a part of it. We will definitely continue to negotiate in good faith. That's our intent, is to negotiate in good faith. I have, quite honestly, I think there'll probably be a couple of months where everybody's just mad at us at that board meeting and we don't accomplish a lot. And then maybe after a couple of months, cooler heads will prevail and there'll be further discussions. But I think that, we have to start from somewhere, and this is it.
All right. Thank you, Robert. Nyla.
The one thing that I would like to add is ever since the study came out, I have been trying, and Robert has too, been trying to get conversation and push the agenda to accomplish the items that were on the study that we need to comply with, such as the commission. Unfortunately, I feel that we didn't make any progress, perhaps because feet were being dragged. At one point, I said, if I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and have additional meetings to get this along, push this along. And I asked if any other of the fire board members were willing to do that. And Robert was the only one who was willing to work on this with me. It's important that we get this to move along, and due to this, I feel that we need to adopt this resolution to get things to progress, because I just feel like right now we're in limbo, and I would just like things to move on and to make progress on this situation, so that, but no matter what happens, we need our volunteer firefighters. We appreciate our firefighters. And I want all of the firefighters to realize that. So that's just where I'm at.
Thank you. Thank you. One of the things I'd like to do as we're discussing this is, let's go around. If people gotten questions from members of the public, have folks reached out at all? What are some of the things that maybe we've been asked and we've been talking about with some of our constituents? And let's start with some of the non-fire board members if we can. Joe, if you got any questions from people?
I would guess probably the most common question that I've gotten is that there's a perception that if we create the Village of Waunakee Fire Department, that it's going to somehow entirely replace what exists today. And I don't think we're anywhere near that scenario, but I guess that would be the biggest question that I've gotten.
Would a new fire department replace the existing?
Yeah. I mean, everything from the leadership, the volunteers, the equipment, the whatever. So they look at that and then look at the expense of that. And I just think there's just a lot of misinformation around that.
I think what we've talked about, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're hoping that the volunteer firefighters will remain with the village and come over and help form the next generation of this leadership. One of the things from our last conversation as a village during our board meeting was that, the fire district predates the 1933 district. So there was a fire department of volunteers beforehand, and then this district, which has worked wonderfully for decades. And now we're at the point where we've just grown as a village and are needing to move into the next phase. So hopefully we'll continue in this tradition. Yeah. But I think that'll probably be up to us and how strong of a commitment we're making to the volunteer firefighters and making sure that they understand that they're appreciated and that this is really the lifeblood of the department. Erin, what questions have you had?
I think similar to Joe, there's just people absorbing different, pieces of information at different times and hearing about the situation, like coming in at different parts of it, and confusion, whether it's the village and the firefighters as a group or if it's other municipalities. And so I think as, I've talked to people about it, and can kind of shed a little bit more holistic viewpoint, because it's hard to not be involved and be reading things on the paper or online or hearing things at the coffee shop, et cetera. It's just that communication has helped people, I feel like, almost have a little more calmer when they're asking the questions. And yeah, I'll reiterate what I said last meeting. Providing fire service is one of our most basic jobs as a village, and as a village board, it's one of our primary responsibilities to ensure the safety of our citizens and the people that live here and work here and play here and all these things. And we cannot do that without the firefighters, and it's their selflessness and commitment to that same mode of service and giving to community that allows us to even fulfill that obligation we have to our citizens. So none of this is with the intent to, have different or less firefighters than we do right now. This is how we can support our growing village. And so I think when people understand more of what's going on, and as they read into this stuff, it hopefully makes more sense to them. I don't know if Brian is the right person to ask on this, but the distribution of assets with withdrawal, are you familiar with the operating agreement at all?
Well, I mean, we have language in the operating agreement.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be hesitant to really, I think that the best way to look at this is if you adopt the resolutions, this is the start of the process.
Yeah.
And it's really gonna be, it's gonna, how this goes moving forward is going to be dependent on probably some discussions with the other members. I mean, the other members definitely play a role in this process.
I have it up right now in one section under withdrawal from the district, notice required, says 18 months. And then the next paragraph is under section 4.02 above, the withdrawing municipality shall be compensated on the basis of its ownership at the time of withdrawal. So my understanding is, well, because you're right, we're not disbanding anything with this.
So, yeah, I guess
It's
the
almost
reason why I would-
reversed what was asked of us. So I just was wondering.
And so we
if that's-
definitely have that language. I mean, how I've seen this happen in the past. Because the village isn't the first,
Yeah.
this is not the first time that this has happened, where you've effectively had one community that's kind of outgrown some of the other communities in the district, and so they've gotten to the point where notice has been provided to withdraw. And this is where you really have to see how it's gonna play out. So what I'm about to say is by no way, shape, or form the only path that can be taken. But many times what will happen is, it's also ultimately a math issue for both the village of Waunakee, but also for the other communities, because at some point in time, they're gonna sit down and they're gonna say, okay, we're gonna provide fire services. How do we wanna provide fire services? Is it gonna be through the village of Waunakee? Is it gonna be through some other entity? And ultimately, the parties are probably gonna sit down and figure out a way, if it's still going, if the village of Waunakee is going to provide fire services in Westport and Vienna and Springfield, there are different ways where we can get from point A to point B as it relates to finances. Because in all likelihood, where Waunakee is going to end up is, if the resolutions are passed, eventually Waunakee is going to have its own fire department. And Waunakee is going to have at least 2 contracts that are in likelihood going to be in place. One is going to be with the volunteer firefighters to provide service. And then another one is going to be a contract related to potentially providing fire services in other communities. And that is like any other agreement that Waunakee or other municipalities have. You negotiate it. How do we make this the best process for all parties involved? And sometimes, again, I'm not saying this is the only process, but sometimes what happens then is assets that are in a fire department effectively become the village's assets. But there's value to those assets that the towns are then giving up, which means that then that first contract that you may have to provide services in those communities, the costs are going to be substantially lower for those communities because they've effectively paid for those services through allowing those assets to come to the village of Waunakee Fire Department. Again, I'm not saying that's absolutely going to happen, but that's one thing that has happened in other communities in the past. And that's a long way of saying, that's why I wouldn't get too hung up on the language in the operating agreement right now, because while there's definitely language that addresses this, many times what happens is parties just sit down and try to figure out a way, how is this going to work out best for everybody?
Okay, thank you. I think so if another municipality, like, let's say none of this is happening and another municipality maybe says, well, Middleton is growing, we could get them there, or I shouldn't have used a real life example, like, it would be almost similar where like, then if they're leaving to go to a new district, they're getting their portion of the assets.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly happened. So the example that I'm going to give is the former Verona area fire district. I do believe that at one point in time, Springdale was in the Verona area fire district, and then they end up moving to the Mount Horeb area fire district. And so at that point in time, when Springdale left, they did not, the Verona area fire district did not disband, but they probably left and took some, essentially got paid out when they withdrew, and then used that money, and I don't know this for certain, but probably then to buy into the Mount Horeb. And that to me, probably all had to do with location.
Yeah.
Okay, all of a sudden, because if you've driven out in that area, Springdale probably is closer to Mount Horeb than it is to Verona. And so you can see why the town in that instance would have made that change. But that would be an example of an entity leaving a district, but the district continuing to move on. And again, that's where, I don't know what's going to happen here, but that's why I want to make sure that everyone understands The resolution before you is withdrawal by the village. It's not disbanding the district, 'cause the district could continue without the village.
Oh, thank you. I think that helps. A lot. Thank you.
And one of the things you said too, that I want to make sure, this is not us withdrawing or commenting in any way, shape or form on the membership. They have done an amazing job. Their dedication is phenomenal. And just the sheer day-to-day effort. But then when you look at, I think it was a week ago Thursday, when you had 3-4 fire calls all at once, the ability to meet and take care of a community under those circumstances is amazing. This is us just realizing that our intergovernmental agreement has kind of outlived its usefulness for us as a village. So that's we want to really underscore, and you touched on that, kind of what we're really doing here. Yeah. Sam.
I mean, the questions that I received, obviously, are you going to push the volunteer firefighters out, which we've already covered, is no. And just frankly, simply why? I spent a fair amount of time actually visiting residents in person, showing them documents, answering their questions, both in the town and the village. And after all those conversations, which I should note came from a wide variety of geographic locations, political persuasions, all of them said, well, you need financial control of your own asset. Nobody on this board has said anything that, we disagree with the wonderful work that the membership is doing. What we're trying to do is give them the tools to move into the 21st century and succeed for coming years.
Thank you, Sam. Trisha, what questions have you gotten? Have you gotten
Right along with everybody else, more just a clarity question and understanding of why this has become such an issue. I think there is sort of a question of like feeling like this is should be a partisan issue, but it's not. Like this is something where it's really about Waunakee and the challenge, the opportunities, there's just the growth and that's happened to it, and how, Kristen, you said it well, where there's an agreement that was formed a long time ago and so much has changed. And so we need to either change that agreement or do something different. And that's the decision that we're now having to deal with. So I think once you kind of just once I've been able to just explain to people, like, this is where we're at with it, it makes sense. Like, this is just us looking out for Waunakee and trying to keep that quality of service, that dependability, the reliability that we've all come to love and appreciate in place.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing kind of the information that questions we've been getting and the information we've been sharing. So I did meet with both Josh and Bert a couple of weeks ago, and then a week ago tonight, met with the membership, and we had a lot of questions. And it's clear the level of caring is very, obviously, as we know, is very deep. Also a lot of hurt feelings over kind of how this has played out in public over the last month or so. And one of the analogies that was given to me is that, watching the disagreements at the board, the committee meetings, the fire committee, fire board meetings, is a lot like watching parents argue, people that care deeply about a group of people arguing over kind of what should be the next step in it. So my commitment to the membership was that going forward, I'm going to spend a lot more time listening. I'm going to be present more than maybe I've been able to be present over the last couple of months, because if this change is coming, if we elect to do this, our concern is not just providing fire service, but it is also making sure that the members are as supported as we possibly can support them, that we're listening to concerns, that we're understanding that, beyond the day-to-day service, there is maybe a vision that the firefighters have for what the future of firefighting could look like in Waunakee. And we want to make sure that we not only respect that going forward, but something that you, Robert, and you, Nyla, and I talked about as we were starting to contemplate this is also, how do we honor what has happened in the past and the commitments not only that the firefighters have had, but we have these fire committee board members, some of whom have served for 15, 16 years on the committee, and making sure that despite the recent kind of struggles over what do we do next, that we are fully honoring what has been built over the last 100 and some years here. So with that, what other comments or questions do we have on this particular item on the agenda? None? All right.
So I
Brian.
don't, I mean,
Mhm.
when you look at the staff memo, obviously, we wanted to see what the discussion was tonight. To the extent that you're inclined to approve the first resolution, I think it would just be move to approve the resolution regarding notice to withdraw from the Waunakee Area Fire District and the Waunakee Area Fire Protection Operating Agreement.
Okay. And moving to that page on our agenda.
So the resolutions are on pages 53 to 57. The staff memo starts on page 51. But again, as you look at the staff memo at this, the way that it was prepared, there weren't necessarily any recommended motions in the packet itself, because I think staff wanted to see how your discussion went.
I kind of didn't talk about the second resolution. I didn't know if we wanted to address that separately or not.
Should we go, would it make sense to go through all three of them? The
Well,
three of the items on, two of the items on the
Yeah,
agenda? I'm
I
sorry.
mean, it's up to you. I think you certainly have you can talk about the second item right now if you'd like to, if you want to vote on the first resolution and then move to agenda item 3 regarding the resolution on creation of the fire department. It's really up to you as to how you'd like to proceed.
What would your preferences be, Robert and Nyla, as the,
I wanted to at least talk about the second
Okay.
item before we did, because there are some points in there. And since I frequently, I think a lot of people understand when I'm addressing people, I address down to the board because that's how I was trained, is you're supposed to address the chair. So I am going to address the firefighters that are here. It's not common for me to face up to the crowd, but I wanted to point out that when we wrote the second resolution, there was a lot of care put into making sure that the firefighters were taken care of, and that we were making it very clear by resolution, by official act, that we want to be collaborative with the firefighters on this. Now, I'm going to say this speaking personally. I know that we have had disagreements at the fire board meetings. I know that some of us have made comments towards each other that we probably don't, in hindsight, probably think we shouldn't have made those comments, but we made them, and we're going to move on from that. Part C of the second resolution, specifically preservation and celebration of a volunteer firefighter model. We have this in here specifically, and the very last line in there is meant. The process shall be done in joint good faith partnership with the volunteer members of the department and the village of Waunakee. We wrote that in there specifically because we felt that, as Nyla and I kind of felt as representatives, that we did not have enough direct interaction with the members, that the fire board was kind of getting in the way of itself of doing that. One comment that was made at a meeting that I did take with me was, I think it was Battalion Chief Adler said, nobody's asking the membership what they want. Nobody's asking the firefighters what they want. And the reality is that under the current model, there's no vehicle for us to do so. We can meet as a district, we can talk as a district, but really there's just this contractual relationship. And so we wanted to make sure that there was an official route, and it sounds like it's unofficially already begun with President Runge, but that we were going to make a very serious effort to work with you. We want to mend bridges. We want to make sure that we're continuing to recognize and to celebrate the volunteer firefighter model. It's a little painful to hear in public constant accusations of we're going to get rid of all the firefighters and bring in full-time firefighters. That has not been said once in this entire process. And I know that there are people who are even within the firefighting membership who have been making these comments. There is, I do not know how to explain this. There is no hidden agenda on this. We want to work with you. We want to make sure that you are celebrated. Something that I also took with me personally that Trustee Fry really pounded in my head when I got on the board was, look at what happened over at EMS, and please don't let that happen ever again. EMS had to fight just to get a Friends of EMS, just to get a monument out front, and they have to take care of it themselves. I don't want to see that happen with the fires. I don't want to see any of that stuff happen. I do come from a family that served volunteer firefighters in a rural area in Maryland, so I do have some empathy towards this. So, I really want to make sure that people understand that that is an important part of that resolution. And then for the municipalities that are here, we do intend to try and offer you contracted services. And much like Brian stated, I would hope that we can have good faith negotiations over it to do that. These things are all deliberate and intentional. We didn't just throw together a resolution and say, let's see what sticks. Like everything that's in here, there was care put behind it. There was a reason behind it. And more than happy to discuss any portion of it if anybody has any questions, because Brian, Brian made it look much more official, but this was the result of what I had drafted and put together. So more than happy to answer questions.
All right. Thank you, Robert. What questions do we have then? There's a lot in this and the thought and care that went into putting this together is really evident to me at least. So what questions do we have? And Nyla, I don't know if you want to lead with a comment or.
I just want to say that everything that board members has said is correct, and especially what Aaron said. As board members, our primary concern when we take our oaths is to serve and protect the community. So that is foremost in my mind, and I'm sure it's foremost in everyone's mind. Just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware of that.
Sam.
I would just reiterate also that we welcome hearing from people. We tend to prefer that over social media chatter because we can actually talk to you and explain some of the motivations on why something's being done and not just the after reaction. So I just encourage anybody, anytime, but please reach out to any of us. We're happy to speak with you about this matter or any other matter.
Phone call, email, all of it's great. Yes, absolutely. Aaron.
Yeah, on the first resolution, the section 6 that says the adoption of this resolution by the Waunakee Village Board does not prevent discussions with the towns of Springfield, Vienna, and Westport for changes in the terms of the operating agreement, alternative solutions to withdrawal, or if agreed upon a more expedient, my speech therapy background is showing itself that I needed that, of the existing district. So would that process be board to board, town board to town board, or does that go through the fire district board for?
I think in all likelihood, it would be more, I don't know, that could go a number of different paths. I think that paragraph there kind of captures some of what we have been talking about earlier. In other words, this is the first step in the process. It's if the board takes it, it's a necessary step in light of the language and the operating agreement. But there's multiple paths that the parties could take. I mean, and there's multiple very positive paths. I mean, and I think everything that you all have been saying tonight have been very positive, and I think that's hopefully the way this is going to end up. Is other communities have found workable ways to work through this, and I think Waunakee and the other communities and the firefighters can too. But that paragraph, I think, I would just kind of broadly stated for a reason, because we know that there's many different paths that we can take. And the only other thing I would add about the second resolution is I think everything that's in there is meaningful and important. There may be other things that we need to do. I mean, that's not intended to be an all-inclusive list. Obviously, you have a police department, so it's not like this is going to be new to have a public safety department within the village of Waunakee, but fire is different than police. And so there are going to be things. And the good thing is, if the village wants to, it's going to be able to contact other communities that were in the village's position in the past and created their own fire department to, hey, what were some of if you could do it all over again, how would you do things a little bit differently? Maybe you can learn from some of those communities and then apply that here.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, Joe.
I'll second what Sam said. If there are questions, by all means, reach out to any of us, because those conversations are so much more valuable than a lot of the other things that happen online and that sort of thing. Otherwise, I think this is good. It's a good first step. As Brian said, it's absolutely not everything that needs to potentially be considered, but it's a good place to start.
Thank you, Joe. Tricia.
No, you guys have really underscored the value of the fire department, from the volunteers and everything that exists today. And this is truly just that next step. When we're at, what was it, 72%, 71? I couldn't hear Todd's exact percentage of where we're at in this organization, and the fact that we get one vote. I think this is a business decision that protects all of Waunakee. This is just something that is the responsible next step, even though it's hard and it's scary just because it's change. But I think hopefully everybody understands, like, this is us looking out for that the next 5-10 years. This is just a natural step with growth.
Thank you, Tricia. Thank you, Tricia. Any other comments or questions or things to add? No, with that, then I would like to make a motion to adopt the resolution regarding giving notice to withdraw from the Waunakee Area Fire District.
I'll second.
Any discussion on the motion? All right, before we take the vote, I want to say again that, again, this is a discussion or a move that we're taking to, in response to the intergovernmental agreement, that we will stand behind you as a firefighting force, that we hope that you are communicating with us and that we are communicating with you so that we can give you the support that you need and deserve throughout this transition and into the future. So any other comments before we take the vote? I'm afraid we can't take a comment before the vote from the public. Yeah. So,
I believe he's trying to say we have 2 votes, not 1 vote.
pardon?
He was trying to say we have 2 votes, not
Yeah.
1 vote.
Oh, yeah, we do have 2 votes. Yeah, so this is on the resolution one. Thank you. Thank you.
2 votes on the fire.
On the fire.
You say 2 votes on the firework. Tricia said we had 1 vote. That's,
Yeah.
he was just trying to. correct.
Okay,
Sorry,
okay.
I got you.
Sorry.
Thank you. All right, are we clear? And on what we're doing? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's all right. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. All those in favor?
What, do you have a second?
I second.
Yeah.
He made the second.
Sorry.
All those, and thank you, Brian. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do all those, any opposed? None? No abstentions? Motion carries. Item number 3 then, and I will move to the next page here. I would like to make a motion adopting the resolution to, thank
Village
you,
of Waunakee
creating
Fire
the Village of Waunakee Fire Department.
I'll second it.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. All right, thank you all very much. Thank you for the good discussion. Thank you all for being here tonight. If you have questions or comments as we are moving forward, please feel free to reach out to any of us personally. I will be present at possibly the next membership meeting if I'm allowed, so that I can answer questions and continue the conversation. All right. All right. All right, thank you, guys. Thank you. All right, we appreciate it very much. And thank you, Robert and Nyla, and thank you, Brian. Yeah. Next item on the agenda, discuss and take action on employee personnel handbook modifications.
Yep, this is a continuation of discussion you had a month or so ago before on a couple of policies, and then one new policy recommendation for you to consider tonight related to our handbook. So the first 2 we discussed together. Staff received, we had good discussion at your meeting. We took into account your feedback. We considered some edits. I also further involved department heads in reviewing the policies and providing feedback. So it's kind of a amalgamation of all that feedback, combination of all that feedback now. So going one by one, the first is paid parental and compassionate leave, and page 45 through 47 of your packet includes an edited version of the version that you saw a month ago. This is a new policy proposal. These benefits don't currently exist in our handbook, but the point of these is both to care for our staff, but also to be competitive in the hiring marketplace, as we're seeing paid parental leave policies becoming a more common addition in handbook and policy practices for public employees. So a number of modifications here. I think the most notable thing I'd point out that you might ask about is, why did we change the proposal for paid compassionate leave from 80 hours paid to 40 hours paid? And as a reminder, paid compassionate leave is to care related to miscarriage or stillborn circumstances. The reason we made that change is the realization that our bereavement policy is 40 hours. So it seemed like an awkward mismatch to have 80 hours in this case of bereavement as as opposed to 40 hours for others. So that's why you saw that numeric change in the policy proposal. I can tell you that with the village, hearing your feedback, discussions with the village team, and especially with Jared together, Jared serves as our HR manager. We did a whole lot of what if scenarios as we thought about this, and we could have come up with a 10-page policy for you, but we distilled it down to what you see today, recognizing that there very well may be an unexpected or unusual circumstance that happens upon us at some point in the future. This doesn't keep you from being in a position to address a unique one-off circumstance that we can't necessarily imagine today, or modify the policy again in the future. But today, we believe this is our best approach to get in the game of supporting our staff in this way. So why don't I pause there? See if you have any questions. Ask someone to give me some more water if you wouldn't mind, so my voice sticks with me here.
All right, what questions do we have? Nyla, any questions?
It looks like the revisions are complete. Things that we talked about at the previous meeting, and I appreciate the work the staff did on this.
Thank you, Nyla. Trisha?
Nope, no questions.
Sam?
I think you did a great job covering what we asked for. When we approved these, what is sort of the tentative goal for having the remainder of the handbook completed?
Good question, Sam. I have as a kind of a professional goal here to complete full review by middle of 2025. Best laid plans. But that would be the goal. I think what we're doing here this month and last month are trying to address those things that jumped most aggressively off the page for us. There may be more sort of short-term fixes that we address over the coming months, but I would like to have a complete review done by mid-year.
Any others? Nope. Erin?
I'm just excited to see this step for the village. There's so much research that parental leave increases the health and well-being of both child and parent and just families overall. And I think it's a great step for equality too, and the caretaking role of a family, and that either parent can create those bonds. And I'm also excited about the compassionate leave. I wish none of our employees need to take this because that's such a heartbreaking event, but I'm hopeful that if so, we can support them in this way. So thank you, staff, for your work on this. I think it's great.
Joe?
It's very complete and yeah, thanks to staff for all the work that's been put into this to make, to get us to the point we're at.
Robert?
One quick question on the procedure for use second bullet where you had the change from the line out from eligible employees must provide timely documentation. The new line that just says documentation may be required at this time. Is that like a typo, or? It's not very clear what that means. It's at the top of page 47 of the
47.
packet, the second bullet point. It just says documentation may be required at this time, and it's kind of seems like a hanging sentence.
Oh, you know what? I think the intent was to add that additional sentence and not delete the first sentence in
Oh,
that paragraph.
Okay.
Mike, is that correct? I think that's what happened.
Page 47.
I remember the goal for that language was to provide clarification in the fact that there's a difference between asking for pre-event documentation along with a later bullet where we may require post-event documentation. So I believe, I'm certain that what we'd be asking you to approve is the first sentence that's unintentionally crossed out in addition to the new second sentence.
Okay. That makes 100% more sense.
Yep. Thanks for catching that.
Yep.
All right, any other, Trisha? No questions? Any other question? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, I'm good. Sorry. I couldn't unmute fast enough.
All right. Yeah, thank you all for the work on this, for listening to the comments that we made. We went over this a couple of weeks ago. Very much appreciated. And I'm going to ditto Aaron. Excited that we're able to offer these benefits.
And congratulations to Robert for passing my test that he read the packet.
All right. With that,
I like to throw one of those in every once in a while. you know,
how
but
close are we?
This
paying
was no
attention
accident.
tests? All right. So,
No, good catch.
Robert's
Text
the
in
only
the
one
mail.
that passes tonight. Yeah. All right. Do we have a motion then?
Do you want to take them each individually one by one or all as a group?
Sure.
Okay. Sorry, so you do want
That's all
to,
right. Well, why don't we do it as a group? Yeah.
okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Nope, that's right. The second policy, this one was, again, the discussion the board had was a good one, and I did modify the initial proposal, which was of the remaining balance of sick leave, no, I'm sorry, of vacation leave above the 40 hours that could be carried over. The proposal you saw a month ago was to take 25% of that balance up to a 20-hour maximum. I know I didn't budge a ton on this, but I did, Renee and I worked up about 8 different scenarios of ways that this could be arranged. And I'm going to maintain an urging that we don't create a policy to entice non-use of vacation if we can all prevent it. So at the same time, we do want to acknowledge that sometimes there's circumstances and I think we can make the pain of losing vacation that you couldn't otherwise use a little bit less painful. I also did want to balance the fact that what we're suggesting here is an expense we'd have to budget that we don't currently budget. So for example, at the new proposal, 50% of remaining balance up to 20 max for our 2024 leftover balances, the total budget impact is just about $11,000. So, and every other scenario or version of us adjusting those ratios or where the cutoff is or the max, I see us also pushing up against our budget. For example, if all of the 19 employees who had carryover vacation in 2024, if they all were aware of our policy and made it an objective to carry over 20 hours purposefully because they know they would get paid out for that, that budget impact almost doubles to $18,400. So also, if we were to say go to a 40-hour max and just these 19 employees saw fit to maintain a balance of those additional 40 hours, that payout would be $37,000. And that's I'm only talking about those 19 employees. So there's also a perspective or a reference that I want to share with you of budget consciousness that I'm trying to build into the discussion too. So I believe we can succeed at a combination of those goals if we look at that 50%, that 20 max proposal. With that, I'm happy to talk more about what you'd like to do.
What is the lowest pay scale that people don't use their vacation? Is there, how low does the hourly rate go where the vacation has not been utilized?
Do you have some, Renee, or you or Jared have some anecdotal sort of perspective?
I can't remember offhand who's on the list.
I think the difference though doesn't relate to wage as much as it relates to length of service, because that leads to an increase in the amount you get each year.
Okay.
Now, typically, the longest serving employees tend to be higher on the scale because, well, they've made their way across the chart, our wage chart. So do you want?
So looking at it, it would be, sorry. Looking at that list there, there's a couple people who are right in the middle of our pay scale. They're the lowest ones who are on there. The rest of the people are in the higher end of the pay scale.
Okay. My other question is, how often is it that somebody maybe requesting vacation that they're told, we just can't handle it at this time? Has that ever happened?
It does. I think the most departments where they find that as a challenge is occasionally in the police department when shift coverage is really a requirement, but circumstances outside of anybody else's control forces the command of the police department to reject a request for vacation or even cancel a request for vacation on a moment's notice because of a circumstance for shift coverage. The other circumstance would be in public works. Bill could talk about the times that he perhaps has experienced this, but here you're likely in a situation where there's either an emergency or a snowstorm or a bad storm with debris, and we have to be all hands on deck to address the challenge. I don't know if you might not have that's pretty much the gist of the circumstance.
Yeah, that'd be right. Usually get to the end of December there and people got their vacation planned out, and because we've had a snowstorm, they've had to cancel it or move things around to make it work.
Okay, so then one other question. You brought up the police department. Are they under a different contract for this than we are, or how would that work?
Yeah, and Jared can jump in on this too, as he worked in the negotiating team for our union contract. But yes, there's the union contract that covers the majority of the sworn officers. Command staff, some of the command staff are not under the union contract, but do the provisions on the union contract for the most part mirror our vacation benefits?
I believe so, but let me just check real quick.
I do not believe that there is a vacation payout piece in the union contract. So we have not historically paid them out, so then they would fall under this handbook.
The more generous policy would be bestowed
Okay,
if it's not addressed in the contract language.
okay. So, Bill, I know with the department that you have, there may be questions around deer season, hunting season, and getting time off, and having a snowstorm or whatever. So is there a big backup in that department sometimes or not?
I guess I'm not quite understanding.
For instance, if you had a couple employees who were scheduled to take off time for, let's say, deer season, and we had a snowfall and they had to stay, does that, create a backup in your whole department of people wanting to take time off?
Yeah, I mean, obviously then those people would have a bigger bank, I'll say, of a vacation that they were unable to use due to the fact of the event we're dealing with.
Right, so it's at the end of the year that they would realize that they may not be able.
Most of those guys do a lot of their time in obviously Christmas and deer season is always one. So they usually have their whole year planned out on vacations.
Right.
So if something were to happen where they couldn't use it and there wasn't enough time, I'll say, to the end of the year to use it the way they'd want to use it, yeah, then they would obviously have to either carry over up to that 40 or lose it.
So, yeah, because that's what I'm saying, because of the nature of the type of work they do, they could have plans to take off over Christmas, and because we get a big snow event, it's not because they want to not have their vacation, it's just that it happened that they couldn't take it. I just wanted to emphasize that.
Well, that point and that question was brought up by some of the department heads as we've talked about this. Can we add some language to address special, unique circumstances? My response was, the village board has that ability now. If without any changes to our language currently, if something unexpected came up that forced us into a pinch scenario with our staff, I would expect, at least under my perspective on administration, that we as staff would come to you and request special approval to address that unexpected loss in vacation use in the following year. And I think that's still the case. If we make these changes, you'll still be able to address unique unexpected circumstances by special action.
That makes me feel much better with the language if there can be special consideration.
All right. Other questions on this policy?
Are staff automatically receiving this, or will they have to request it?
This would be automatic.
Okay.
Yeah, because I have to calculate how much is lost anyway. So that's why we have the list of the 19.
Okay, that's how it read. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
I-
so then it would be automatically
How
done.
nice of you.
Yeah. All right, other questions? Robert, Tricia, Joe, Sam? All right, thank you. Next up.
I would just provide one clarification. Jared did find the language in the union contract for police officers that are covered by the contract. And they, do they have carryover too or no? So
We have 48 hours of carryover.
there's also a provision that says all earned vacation not taken as entitled to a maximum of 38 63/100 may be paid on money rather than vacation time off. Does that make sense?
I would have to look at the whole contract. I think that there's different parts, but we have never, that I can recall, is that on leaving the village or just at the end of the year? I would have to look because to my recollection, we have not paid anybody out for unused vacation
Well-
over the carryover.
Welcome to the world of union contracts. Obviously, that's something I think we can look carefully at, but it's not absolutely unusual that we see police officers in particular because of their unique schedules, with language that's unique and different than your typical 40-hour employee. So that I'm not surprised by.
Next up, travel.
This is the first time you're taking a peek at this. Your packet does include a variety of edits to the current policy. And as I explained in the memo, this is really because the system we had been using, which was to follow, Renee, was it a memo through the department?
The Department of Administration would set a reimbursement rate, but in this case, it hadn't been updated since 2022, when we started to notice that with inflation, the meal reimbursements were not cutting it for a lot of people.
Yeah, so we found ourselves stuck under that calculation method that was not fair. So we modified the proposal. You see that in here. We talked about taking the approach of doing, and maybe some of you are familiar with this approach, a per diem for travel where employees simply get X dollars, $60, $70 given to them for their travels, whether they eat or not. I kind of backed off on putting that proposal forward more out of, I guess what I would say, an obligation to transparency and fair use of taxpayer resources to at least require fairly require the receipts. But doing that though, when we provide a reasonable amount for those meals. So I think in consultation with Renee, we've looked at other municipal policies in other communities. We've, and bouncing this off of departments as well, we've landed on this as a good approach that we would recommend going forward.
All right. Any questions on this?
I was gonna say, I like it.
Yeah, it looks like this may be wrong, but the current DOA is $10 for breakfast, $12 for lunch, and $20 for dinner, which I would love to.
Yep, that's
be
what
living
we were
by.
working under.
I would love to eat at that rate.
Yeah. Can't even Culvers on that, yeah.
So you see what our employees kind of bumped up against when they were on their travels.
Tricia?
My only question was not, I think this is good. I think the changes is regardless of not going per diem, but even if it's just the reimbursement is just simply tying it to whatever the federal rate is, because it goes by like, I think it's like MSA or something like that. It's on the website and then it calculates the breakfast, lunch, dinner, hotel max, if that would simplify it. But that was my only comment. I think this is a good change.
Yeah, we use GSA rates at work too.
Yeah.
They fluctuate, yeah. So is there any thought of coming back every year then and updating this if, $20 this year is not going to be $20 next year?
I think what we'll do at a staff level is review it every year. And if it is appropriate for a modification, we would come forward with simply modifying those amounts. Renee, are you going to jump in?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, I think that's reasonable. I mean, we see the reimbursements coming through, so we can kind of see, is it a reasonable, are people able to still eat under these values, or are we, that's kind of how we noticed it the past year or so. So yeah, we would look at it and only bring forward a change if we thought it was necessary.
Is this, sorry,
It's okay.
let's say you are going to an event, a multiple day event, and there's breakfast included one day. Is that all like, you don't get the meals that are included in the event?
Right.
Right, okay, I just didn't see it.
Right,
in-
that's why they're all separated out like this. A per
Okay.
diem is tricky because most conferences and things have at least one meal
Yeah.
included.
Yeah.
So the per diem got to be kind of tricky when we considered that from that perspective.
Sam and Nyla, any questions? No? All right. I think that brings us to the end of our changes. Any others that I've missed?
No, good questions. Appreciate the conversation on it.
With that, do we have a motion?
I'll move to authorize the village administrator to update the employee handbook as proposed, which relates to paid parental and compassionate leave, vacation leave, effective for 2024 leave balances, and the employee reimbursement policies.
I'll second it.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda is discuss and take action on Community Development Department structure and staffing. And the village do you want me to read this first? or
And what I'll
okay.
note is that we'll go into closed session. I think it's very possible that the village board may convene back into open session and take some action. I would note that we're not going to restart. If that happens, we're not going to restart the live version of the meeting, but we are going to record the open session and it'll be connected to the eventual posting of our YouTube video.
Okay, great. So with that, the village board may convene in closed session as authorized by Wisconsin statute 19.85 LC for the 1C, thank you, for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. The village board may reconvene in open session and discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in closed session. With that, do I have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
All right, and a roll call vote.
Sam Kaufman,
Yes.
Erin Moran,
Yes.
Trisha Brown,
Yes.
Nyla Fry,
Yes.
Robert McPherson,
Yes.
Joel Zisselsberger,
Yes.
Kristen Runge.
Yes. Right
Now,
there.
and then we do have a new Zoom link for the closed session that Tricia's going to log off and log back in on.
Excellent. All right, let's go into closed session beginning at 7:18 PM as soon as the room clears. Thank you.
Oh, said it on my end.
All right, we are back in open session and addressing the agenda item on modifying the Community Development Department. Do we have a motion?
I will move to modify staffing in the Community Development Department by eliminating the position of Community Development Public Works Office Manager effective March 1st, 2025, creating the position of Senior Planner, GIS Manager, and replacing the position on the wage scale at H18, modifying the position of Community Development Director to include the title of Deputy Administrator and moving the position on the wage scale to S14, and to authorize the village administrator to engage a recruiting firm at a cost not to exceed $10,000 for recruitment of a Deputy Administrator, Community Development Director.
And I'll second it.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. I believe that leaves one last motion for the
I
evening.
move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Tricia.
Good meeting.
Okay, see y'all. Stay
Everyone.
warm.
Yes.